Good morning, or now almost afternoon. Well, we're still in the morning phases, but we're still peaking in our dopamine. So we turn the lights down, don't fall asleep, just so you can see the slides. And if there's anything up there that looks too small of a font, I'll try to speak through it. But it's also a little technical. We're going to be talking about research and innovations regarding Parkinson's. There's a lot to go on. I can't obviously talk about every aspect of research and innovations, but there's there's certain things that I wanted to talk about. And so in that theme of research, we've been, I would say over the last 20 years, 25 years, we've been talking about management of Parkinson's symptoms. Now, management of Parkinson's symptoms has always been about levodopa and dopamine types of therapy, or we kind of recycle how we give levodopa. And that's one way of definitely managing and helping the disease state, but that's not the only neurotransmitter or aspect of the disease that we end up seeing. So this is not a disease only, right? It's, in a way, sometimes can feel like an illness, but it's actually a syndrome. And Dr. Bixby commented about how it can affect the autonomic system, it can affect how the interrelationships with the heart, it affects the GI system, but in fact, it actually affects the inflammation of the body. So inflammation is a huge part. Again, it's not just a brain disease, it's a neurological disease. The nerves, the biggest bundle of nerves together is where? In our brain. But it touches every single aspect to our toes, right, to our fingertips. So there are going to be situations that maybe predominantly are going to be Parkinson's features, but we still don't understand how to manage all of those symptoms. We try our best with certain medications that we use from other neurological syndromes. When someone has neuropathy from diabetes, or we have some degree of neuropathy from chemotherapy, we try our best with certain medicines to try to treat that. But it doesn't really go after the actual problem of Parkinson's and the syndrome of Parkinson's. So hopefully today you're going to get a little bit more information about that. It's not just a dopamine world. Right? There are actually a lot of neurotransmitters, but also enzymes. And so you may feel like you're going to be going back to 7th grade or 8th grade microbiology and then maybe some high school science. But the research now has changed where we're not only talking about diagnosis, maybe we can get the pre-diagnosis, right? We're focusing on biomarkers. So if we could know 20 years ago that we were going to get Parkinson's, that would be amazing, right? If we have a way of knowing are we going to have cancer, that would be amazing. So we are getting in that field, and we're focusing right now on the research on understanding that early diagnosis, pre-diagnosis, that prodrome. And Dr. Bixby showed that slide that showed non-motor symptoms and then developing motor symptoms. You guys remember that? Where it was like constipation, and it was reduced sense of smell, and sleep disturbances before you start getting motor symptoms. So that's why we call it a syndrome. It didn't just happen overnight. This has been developing 10 to 20 years at least before you actually had any motor symptoms. So we're working on biomarkers, so some of this we'll talk about that as well. And it's something that we don't get to talk about today. Please feel free, like in the question section, we'll try to answer that as well. And so the ultimate goal of what research is transcending to is more about also individualized care. Okay? So again, I know that with privacy and HIPAA and things like that, you don't have to necessarily share, but who here has Parkinson's? Okay. And who here has 2 eyes? And who here has 2 legs? Right? We all have a lot of similarities, but we're actually, when we talk about Parkinson's, we're totally different. If I told you who has this specific gene mutation of Parkinson's, only one person would probably raise their hand. Parkinson's is extremely different from person to person. So if I give you levodopa and give you levodopa, your response is totally different. When we actually started giving medications for levodopa, it was just 1 tablet 3 times a day. Who here has heard that schedule? Right? Now, is that the same though? It's never been studied for women differently from men. It's never been studied properly for weight, according to each person. Who here with Parkinson's has lost weight over the years? It's a common theme. It's the change, there's changes that happen in our body. So we need to also get past that part. And so again, we're talking about research is, there's a lot of gene research, gene therapy. We want to understand our own genetics. That's why it's going to be much more centered into the future of each person's genetics. There's a reason why Dr. Bixby brought up that we are working together on a clinical research endeavor, because we are really invested in this current neurology field. We see that it is not just about giving medicines, but how do we transcend what we're trying to do right now into like individualized care, maybe stopping the disease or slowing it down or having a cure. So we are working together where we have right now 8 clinical trials, but we may have 20. And this is all within Orange County. Not even LA, right? Not even all of California. Like, we're focusing very much in Orange County. And we believe that right now, even in the context of what you have access to, is genetics. So if you've heard of PD gene study or the PD generation study, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you haven't. Well, now you do. Because this is an access that if you have Parkinson's, you can get free genetic testing for the 7 most common genes that exist. And these genes are here. The GBA1, PARK2, Parkin, SNCA, PINK1, PARK7, and then there's another vesicular gene too. Now this is important because we've had patients who come in who've gotten found to be positive for some of these genes, which means that if we have a gene, we can maybe modify that gene and correct it, and then there will be less problems. So where the field of Parkinson's is going is this is one of the aspects, is gene therapy. It's free. Your information is not sold or on the dark web. It is being information to you. In fact, when you come to Dr. Bixby's clinic or my clinic, you can ask to be scheduled, and we don't even get the result. It comes to you directly, and you will get that information later. Okay? So there are clinical trials that actually may be able to halt the disease state. So that's the first aspect, is how one's genes are. Then there's also studies going for one's genes and how it's affected by the environment. Who here has heard about Agent Orange? Okay, so our veterans who are exposed, and even those that were in the military in any capacity, could be exposed to pesticides and chemicals. And who here has been on a golf course before? There's pesticides on golf courses. Who lives in Orange County? Okay, so this was all orange groves. I don't think it's ironic that there's a high concentration of Parkinson's and other neurological disorders, maybe even high rates of cancers in this county, because I think there's a correlation with the pesticides, right? So we know that there is a correlation. There's a beltway of, when you go up to Fresno and Bakersfield, that there's also high concentration of pesticides, and there's heat maps that show there's a higher incidence of Parkinson's. So there is more research going on in that interaction of our genes and how maybe there's some preventative, how can we prevent someone getting a neurological disease? Now, the actual cause of Parkinson's, we presume is something called alpha-synuclein. It's an abnormal protein that spreads, and it's a misfolded protein. So what ends up happening is, if you eat something, your body digests it, uses the nutrients that it needs, and then it breaks it down, and it gets rid of the waste, correct? Well, that's how your cells work. And we'll talk more about that, but there's a lot of research also going into alpha-synuclein. How do we prevent these abnormal proteins from misfolding or becoming abnormal? They're normal, but they become abnormal because they clump together. So we are working on vaccines to actually block it from clumping. So there's been numerous trials that have gone on. They haven't been successful. We've been 0 for 6, and we have a 7th one, and an 8th one, and maybe a 9th one. So we're trying to see if we can get diagnosed early. Maybe we can prevent it from building up. That would be amazing. But how do we do that unless we have biomarkers to then try to make sure who's going to get it, right? Who's going to maybe be in the capacity of developing Parkinson's. And maybe that's through genetics. So everything really depends on each other. That's why it seems like it's taking forever, but I think that we're actually turning around where we're getting a lot more focus. And so the research right now is about anti-clumping. There's also the neuroinflammation pathway, the chronic pathways. So when you get, let's say you bump your elbow and it's that funny bone that's really irritating, but then it starts to swell. What happens? That's inflammation, right? It starts swelling. You get a bee sting, there's inflammation. Your body creates certain types of auto response that, again, the inflammation is natural to protect you. But that can also be negative for the brain. So when the alpha-synuclein actually gets to the brain, it can be irritating, and then we have our own body attacking itself. Have you guys heard of those type of disease states where the body gets attacked? Right? There's something called Guillain-Barré, there's a lot of other disorders that exist, but we can get antibodies against ourselves. So if we can reduce the inflammation in our brain, that would be helpful. So that's another aspect of research that's going on. And then there's the gut-brain axis, which is our GI system, what we put into our system, how it gets into our GI system. When you were born, your stem cells that mom and dad helped create, and when they spread, the GI system actually was connected to the nervous system as well as to the brain, and that's how it's separated. But they're connected. They're connected in numerous pathways, but one of them is called the vagus nerve. But they're connected, and around the GI system are bundles of nerves, right? If you get bad news, you feel like you got hit in the stomach. That's because your brain perceives something negative, and then you feel it in the stomach, right? There's a lot of GI connection to the brain. But there's also, that's one of the biggest pathways, is alpha-synuclein, that's the abnormal clumping, is all around the GI system and all around the nerves there, and that's what makes its way to the brain. So if we can prevent that progression, that's going to help halt the disease potentially, right? That would be amazing. So when one of these research kind of hits, you're going to see that we're going to be a domino effect of everything else is going to be beneficial. The other aspect is within the neurons, the brain cells, where alpha-synuclein is, where we have our natural thought processing and pathways for thinking and coordination. Every cell needs energy, and the basics of biology is the mitochondria. So we're learning about how does the mitochondria in the cells stay strong and not fatigue, and hopefully that doesn't degenerate. So that's the next aspect of research. So there's a lot going on in the field. Okay? And luckily, with AI, I think there's a lot of communication between different labs to also work with this. So I'm going to go to the genetic part. So the PD gene study, you guys are welcome to sign up. And you can actually go online, you can put in PD gene study, and there's local places that you can get it. You can also send your information, and a kit can be sent to you, and you can also have it sent out if you want. But a lot of our clinics are doing it with blood tests. And it's, again, helping to accelerate clinical research. But it gives you information, empowers you with information. If you know your blood type, right, you can either know the blood type, so if something were happening, you need to donate, or you need to get blood, then you can have that information. This is just information to have, and it's pertinent, because some of our patients want to know if it's a genetic factor. That's important for you, but also for your family members, potentially. Or it could be environmental, and then maybe right now you may be thinking, okay, it's not a gene, so there must be environmental, but then what else is, what was I exposed to, what could be an issue, and that can also help others in the family. So our gene therapy right now, it's innovative ways of, if you have your own gene and you know which is the problem, we can again actually cut out the abnormal sequence. Okay? So if you're writing a letter, let's say a text, let's say we're texting someone, right? Everyone texts now. So if you wrote something, and it goes out and it comes out as the wrong way, maybe you can edit it. So that's what we're able to do. We can edit the text. We can edit the sequence. So when you send a message, it's implied as sending information. Well, that's what the cells do, or that's what your body does with genes. You make proteins in cells, and maybe those cells are not working well over time. Well, now we can slow that down, right? We can slow down the abnormal sequence, create new cells. So there actually has been huge advantages even in the world of vision. People who had something called Leber's vision loss, that's a genetic cause. People were able to get their vision back because of gene therapy. They were blind for 60 or 70 years, and all of a sudden now they get their vision back. Can you imagine that with Parkinson's? So this is not going to be something that is just sci-fi. This is actually happening. So I want you to be encouraged. And so the genetic messaging does influence some people, and I think it does influence all of us. It's just a matter of we need to find out our individual related issues. So that's why, again, even though we have the symptomatic benefit right now with medications, we have surgical options. It's helping a lot, but it's not helping enough. Agree? So this is going to be one aspect. Maybe gene therapy can help us. We're very bullish on this and believe that there's going to be less cell death within the brain, and maybe we're living not only healthier, Parkinson's free of symptoms, but living longer and stronger. So I think that there's going to see other health conditions improve. So these are, again, the 7 genes that we're studying right now for the PD gene study. If you're signing up, you also have a way of also saying that you can also have your blood tested for other genes, and then maybe you're helping to contribute to find out if there's actually other genes that we all may have in common. So again, it's pretty noble. So let's go back to our basic science. So this is the neuron. Okay. So the neuron, the nerve cells, this is very similar within the brain and also within the nerves of our fingertips, or wherever we want to feel the pressure. But the cells have a unique feature. But this is the cell body. This is where all the exciting things happen with the aspect of Parkinson's. If you have some other nerve injuries, maybe neuropathy, maybe there's problems here. But this is where we're going to focus on. This is where the energy source is. So who's more important? A garbage man or a doctor? No, but that's not a trick question. The garbage man is more important. Okay, let me explain to you. Because if we're not recycling here, we're not having the garbage removed, things build up. Okay? Doctors can admire and look at it, but they can't fix it. Garbage men, they're the key. So imagine if you didn't have your garbage taken out, things will be building up, building up, building up. That's the alpha-synuclein. So what ends up happening is now we're going to take a deep dive into the cell of the neuron. This is where all the magic happens. A healthy cell has everything functioning well. Something comes in, something must come out. We don't want something coming in and then something getting stuck. Make sense? That's what's happening in the neurons of someone with Parkinson's, where we're building up and clumping, and then the cell doesn't get to function well. If that area doesn't function well, then that's what happens. It doesn't work properly to send new signals. Sometimes it may function well, and then sometimes it doesn't, and that's how we feel with Parkinson's. Sometimes we're doing good, and sometimes we're not doing good. Agreed? And so this is the key part, is that the research is focusing on how to keep the cell body intact and functioning the way it's supposed to. And then we're going to talk about how this is, again, the neuron, the cell body, and then all the other signals, but then this is all inflammation around it. So now, again, let's say we're talking about the garbage man. If he's not coming to pick up stuff, everything's building up, and now we're getting mildew and all this other stuff that are around the body, right? And this is, again, what the research is: can we stop the mildew or the buildup around once there's a slow process within the neuron? Within the neuron, there's something called the lysosome. And this is the garbage man. But even more than garbage man, he's your cop, or she's your cop. This lysosome is the fire department. It's also the sheriff. It makes sure everything's coming in right. It's the Amazon delivery guy. Lysosome does a lot. The lysosome is making sure that it regulates the environment of the cell. If the cell is not happy, then it's irritable. Imagine when it gets too hot in the house, then you're not happy. It gets too cold, and someone needs to regulate the thermostat. This is what the lysosome does. So there's research right now focusing on the lysosome. Why is this important? Because if you look to the right here, GBA LARC2, where did you see that before? You saw it in the gene testing, right? All the genes, the two most common, are related to the lysosome. Told you this is going to be a little bit of science. Okay, so hopefully this is important, because if we can help regulate the lysosome, then maybe the neurons are working better. You didn't hear anything about dopamine, but this is happening within our dopamine predominant cells. The alpha-synuclein is clumping the cells and irritating the environment of the neurons. The lysosome itself is not functioning well. It also helps with energy balance. It's your personal trainer. It's helping you meditate. It keeps the environment, like I said, happy and healthy. And when the cell has to be programmed to say, I'm going to degenerate when it wants to, right? Then this lysosome is also very important in that pathway. There's a fancy term called apoptosis, okay? And there's a medical term called autophagy. Raise your hand if you heard of autophagy. You may hear more and more of autophagy. That is the waste management system, basically, to clean up the dead cells. And it's normal to generate and degenerate, right? Our skin cells fall out very quickly. Our hair cells fall out and should grow back faster, but they don't, right? Our tongue cells, they grow up very fast, right? They regenerate very fast, but neurons are the slowest. So again, once we understand the lysosome and we can understand the genetics behind it, we're going to hopefully feel like we can maybe have less symptoms. I think we're big believers of that. The unique thing is, also within the lysosome, it's such an important organ within the cell, is that the enzymes it breaks down could be a biomarker, could be a blood test for Parkinson's, maybe even years before. And that's the other studies that we're doing right now, is that we can also check within the CSF, within the spinal tap, but there's other ways that's going to be potentially a blood test. So we may be able to diagnose Parkinson's earlier, before it's actually with our motor symptoms. And as Dr. Bixby showed you, there's this time period program 10 or 20 years before, and maybe this is developing, that if we can check for these blood tests, we can know if we're at risk. Our next gene, GBA1, you don't have to memorize these. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. But this is, again, one of our most common forms of familial, right, cause of Parkinson's, the one that's genetic. So a lot of people come to our clinic and they always say, well, no one in my family has Parkinson's, because it's not that common to run in families. If it does, it's about 13 to 15% maybe, okay? As of right now, we believe it to be more environmental. However, this gene itself is also very important, just like the lysosome, and how it connects and works with the lysosome, but it also helps with the mitochondria, the energy source. So patients who may have the positive gene mutation for GBA1 may have maybe more cognitive issues related to Parkinson's. It's difficult to handle stress, sleep cycles, things like that. And so, again, this is an important gene to understand, and if we can slow down this gene, then we can also hopefully actually delay the course of the disease state or maybe cure it. So again, today, I wasn't sure if I was going to say the word cure, but I think that you should know we are towards that avenue of research. Cures are actually possible. Don't quote me on how long. Okay, and then so the gene therapy exists for GBA1. It is actually happening. You guys should be excited about that one. It is actually happening currently. We actually have sent patients who have had positive tests for GBA1. We've actually sent them recently for gene therapy. So there could be cures for patients. And again, I'm scared to say that word because I don't want to have a false sense of hope, but I think that we are getting there, at least for some population within the Parkinson's community. And this is, again, right now been tested for safety and efficacy. And then even if we're able to halt the disease, that means we can manage patients easier without necessarily needing more and more pills as time goes on. So there's going to be a unique feature to that. LRRK2 is the other autosomal dominant genetic cause of Parkinson's, and it can run familially in families, but it can also be that type of gene that doesn't have to run in families. It could be also associated with people developing, as the only person in the family developing Parkinson's. And we know, again, where that gene is. We can edit it, right? Send back that text if we want. And this gene is very important in autophagy, again, that recycling mechanism. It's very important for that transport of signals for energy from one part of the cell body to another organ within it. It allows for interactions, and it helps maintain the lysosome. So innovation with neuroimaging. Who's had an x-ray before? Tells you if the bones are in the structure, if there's a break. Who's had a CT scan before? Tells you if there's Also an injury such as a bleed. Who's had an MRI? Helps you with soft tissue, maybe structures of the brain, maybe differentiation of the brain. Raise your hand if an MRI tells you if you have Parkinson's. It doesn't. It just tells you, did you have a stroke? Right? Did you have a bleed? Or did you have an injury to areas which are common for our Parkinson's center? Sometimes we can have mimickers of Parkinson's. Right? We can have a stroke right in the area of where we coordinate. So for instance, I'm just going to be like simplifying this. If you actually have an injury to your eye, you can't see, correct? Sometimes you can't see. But if you have an injury, like a little stroke in the area of the back of the brain, the occipital lobe, it can mimic like your eye's not functioning, right? So you can have symptoms in your brain that mimic Parkinson's. It doesn't have to be the disease state, it can be a mimicker, and that's why not every single patient has to have imaging. I just want to make sure it's important to get imaging, but you may say, well, I've never had an imaging. Well, that's because maybe if we have a story of tremor that's progressive, slowly getting worse with coordination, then we don't necessarily need imaging because it's part of the disease state. But if it happened all of a sudden, then we're concerned about a stroke or a bleed or something like that. Does that make sense? Now, why is this important? Because imaging, now we have to, if we want to diagnose Parkinson's, we sometimes have to do what's called a nuclear scan, a DAT scan, a dopamine transport scan. Who's heard of that? And so it's a nuclear test. We do it when we feel like it's necessary. Sometimes it's difficult to get that diagnosis. There are patients who come to our clinic and it looks very tremor. It could be from maybe the thyroid medicine, or it could be from another condition, right? Or it could be from or some other medicines. So we sometimes have to differentiate it with this specialized scan. But what's unique about the innovation of neuroimaging is we can actually look at very deep structures of the brain, and that deep structure of the brain, we can actually look at the substantia nigra, which is where most of the dopamine producing cells are. And that neuromelanin, which is a type of pigment that creates the dopamine, that's, again, harvesting a lot of the dopamine, we can now potentially utilize imaging to diagnose it. So you can get an MRI and then not be exposed to a nuclear radiation type of test. So that's going to be huge in our world because it'll be easier to diagnose and hopefully even get some detection of maybe how someone's progressing, which we can't do at this moment in time with imaging. The other component is going to be biomarkers. So neurofilament is a blood test. This is, again, not yet a standalone test for diagnosis, but it is something that when it breaks down from neurons, right, things degenerate, we talked about. If it degenerates at a faster pace, then we can maybe capture it. And if we can capture it, maybe this will be helping us with potentially early diagnosis. There may be features that if someone's progressing faster, then maybe we see a higher rate of neurofilament. So these are things that are being worked on. It's elevated in the blood, it can be in the CSF as well. And at this moment in time, it's still inconsistent. So don't go rushing to your doctor saying I need the neurofilament test. It's still in the works. Everything here today is about research and what's going on. And we'll be happy to be particular with you when you come to the clinic. So gene therapy, right now there's a study going on for a different form of gene therapy. It's called GDNF, and this is a way of, it's in early stages of clinical therapy, and there's an actual growth factor, okay? This is the fertilizer for the brain. You can't have beautiful flowers without the fertilizer. You can't have beautiful neurons and a beautiful, big, robust neuron body without GDNF. So this is a way of giving fuel and nutrients to the cell that needs a little help. So let's go back to that example of that neuron that's not functioning well, the lysosome's not working well, the mitochondria is not working well, and it just needs a little extra love and tender care. And so you give the brain some GDNF and you implant it into a certain part of the body, in the brain actually, but we're implanting this growth factors into an area where there's fluid, where it's a safe area, and then we're seeing if that growth factor can help the neurons rebuild, help and assist. It may not be directly for dopamine, it may not be for a specific gene, but it just helps. And so this is, again, another avenue that maybe has a neuroinflammation as part of the management, okay? So that's currently going on. Stem cells. I know I'm going to get some questions about stem cells. So, I don't have all the answers. I want to be clear about this. There are studies right now. We've been asked by Blue Rock to potentially be a site, but this is a phase 3 study right now, where again, it's not something that you're paying tens of thousands of dollars to be part of. You should be able to sign up as part of a clinical trial. So if someone's saying, we are selling you tens of thousands of dollars of stem cells and we can fix your disease, I don't think that's a smart way of going about it. I think you should do it under a clinical trial that is under the FDA guidelines. But that's just my opinion. But the phase 1 study did show safety and tolerability. The second component of the studies have shown benefit as well, that maybe we can keep the cells alive. The neurons do not degenerate. And then also the stem cells that are implanted are also staying around. Hopefully we can actually program these stem cells to be functioning well enough in the areas we need them to promote more dopamine. The problem has been, even 20 years ago, when we were part of the VA studies, was that when we put in stem cells, the alpha-synuclein clumps would get into the stem cells. So it wouldn't be as effective, right? So there's a lot of genetic engineering to these cells that we now know that we can make them survive and maintain a good, healthy environment for the brain. So maybe we have something for neuroinflammation, someone's taking their dopamine, someone gets their stem cells, and all of a sudden, we're attacking it in multiple ways. And it's going to be a unique, I think, opportunity for patients. Now, not everyone who has Parkinson's should be just going out and getting stem cells. Again, I want to be cautious about this. It's still an invasive procedure. This isn't something you just put into your IV or your arm, okay? The actual studies are trying to implant it into areas of the brain, so it's, again, risky. The other aspect of research is GLP-1s. Who's heard of GLP-1s? Who's heard of Ozempic? Now everyone remembers. Now everyone knows what GLPs are. Ozempic, Wegovy, these are weight loss drugs, right? But they're not really weight loss drugs. Everyone knows them as that. They're diabetes medicines. And in diabetes, what is diabetes? It's an inflammatory disorder. It is not an endocrine disorder only. It is an inflammatory disorder. Patients develop a lot of inflammation from sugars. When you can't break down sugars and they sit around, it's irritating to the nerves, okay? So again, in Parkinson's, we're seeing a lot of inflammation, and so there may be a repurposing of how we use GLP-1s and these type of medicines in the world of Parkinson's. There was a study called exenatide. It was done in the UK. They initially had one study that looked good, a second study that didn't, and the third one that was to break the tie, and it didn't come out positive. That doesn't mean it's not going to be positive. I had a lot of patients who have needed to be on certain GLP-1s and they just feel better. They feel more energetic in the context of their brain. They don't feel as sleepy. I've seen certain things that have been beneficial. They need it maybe before surgery because they need to lose a little bit of weight and they have diabetes management issues, and then all of a sudden they're doing well and they actually recover from surgery well. So my comment about that is this is not meant for everybody. If you're already losing weight, this is not a medicine that you should be on. But if there's an opportunity that it's safe, there is studies going on about this, that it could also help with Parkinson's. Dr. Bitsky and I are working on this study right now. This is called the Cerevance Study. And what we're learning about it is there are areas within the dopamine centers, that we call it direct pathway, indirect pathway. This is a non-Parkinson's, kind of everything's functioning and flowing the way it's supposed to be. And then here we see some degeneration from the substantia nigra of dopamine pathways. And then there's what's called a D1 and D2. So D1 is direct, D2 is indirect pathway. What we're studying with this new medication is maybe we can help the D2 pathways, the indirect pathways, signal better. Well, why would they signal? Why are they not signaling? Because there is something called GPR6, okay? It's an enzyme that is not functioning properly. It's inhibiting, it's slowing things down. So if it doesn't function well, it can make your symptoms more noticeable. There are people who take levodopa, a dopamine agonist, and whatever they may take, they're getting benefits, but they're not getting the full benefits. Sometimes there's inconsistency. This medicine is to help the inconsistency part of it. It helps the other pathways. So you're like, you're going up on the medicine, you go up on the medicine, like, I'm not seeing a difference. Well, maybe there's other pathways that are affected. This could be something that could be useful. So there are some, inclusion criteria and things like that, and that's something that Dr. Bixby would, and I would be monitoring for. And if you are a candidate for the study, then it would offer another way of managing symptoms when we're not getting the benefit from our dopamine. And the current data from the phase 2 study showed that it reduced the off time by almost 2 hours. Patients were having better quality of life. The adverse effects were generally low. There wasn't really daytime sleepiness, which is common with certain dopamine therapies. And so it seems promising to help the disease state. So again, not all about dopamine today. It's about what we can do outside of dopamine, because that is just one of the fuels. All right, let's go back to class. The neuron body. We got within the neuron body, and now we got the nasty environment around it when it gets irritated. Everyone's with me? Okay. So that macroglia, the neuroinflammation, it's a busy slide here, sorry. It's meant to be busy because this is how crazy the brain is. There's a lot of things around that irritate the brain. You eat something, it may not suit well, right? You may think it's good for you, but how much orange juice is good for you? This much, that much, that much. You have too much sugar in the system, it's inflammatory. Maybe some of the food we're having, the GMOs that we're having, the genetically modified foods. Maybe we're not supposed to have that much gluten in our pasta, right? Maybe our bread doesn't need to be as potent as it should be. And so that inflammation gets into our system, works its way around the brain, and once it affects the GI system, then it affects the brain, and then this is when all this inflammation increases. So one of the inflammatory markers is something called JAK, J-A-K, and that gets activated. And when it gets activated, it irritates areas of the brain, and it creates inflammation that causes degeneration. So we're looking right now, and we actually have a clinical trial for this right now in our center, that we can try to stop this inflammation. So this is a unique feature that is not just about dopamine, right? We're not just giving another version of dopamine as a pill form. We're actually trying to slow down the disease. That neuroinflammation is being studied by Biohaven, and what happens is, again, the GI system and then the brain, it connects. So when there's GI issues, you get inflammation in the gut, it does affect the brain, and we see that the JAK pathway, or there's also another enzyme as well that's involved, that if we quiet it down, maybe our symptoms are less noticeable. So again, the inflammation is what the research is going into, and that's just me. Okay. We're done with that part of it. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully it was informational. Hopefully it was encouraging. I said the word cure. I don't know when. So, questions? Yes? All. So methylation, the question is that there was a word about methylation up there, and methylation is a term to, it's not going to be just, it's being worked on. There is, but that's a process, and it's a process of inhibiting. Methylation may help clear out certain pathways, so you can tag maybe a protein that's abnormal, and then you can once it knows it's tagged, it can be cleared out. So methylation is a process. It's not just for one condition, but again, you may have heard the word chelation as well. It's the same thing, that if something built out like too much lead in your system, you can chelate it and take it out. So methylation is a process that we're using in multiple enzymes or peptides, kind of like in these studies. So methylation is one process.
Well, at this time, actually, and wouldn't you actually did the whole 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah,
No, that was great. We got a lot of information. At this time, actually, we would like to invite Dr. Mindy Bixby back. So Dr. Bixby, when you're ready, we'd love to have you up front, because it is officially time to move into the Q&A session with both Dr. Thakkar and Dr. Bixby. So I'm going to be running around like a mad woman, and if you guys don't mind, you can pass the microphone between you two, and I will get the microphone out to the audience. So if you've got questions for either Dr. Bixby or Thakkar, please raise your hand. Oh, I saw Yuri was like, I'm over here, I have got a question. All right, she's making me run all the way to the back. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Yuri. I have young onset Parkinson's. I was diagnosed at an early age. I have a question for both of you guys. You're talking about genetic testing, and I was wondering what are the most promising genetic testing that you have seen tangible results that you can discuss with patients? Like, is it their tremors stopping? Is it that they have better memory, better sleep? Like, what actual tangible results have resulted from these tests, or is it just so early stage?
At least from what my experience thus far is still it's very early stage. This is all new to us, at least new to me. I know Dr. Bixby has had some patients that are in the same boat where we've had positive tests and we're signing people up for studies. I can't speak to what their actual symptoms are getting better, but again, I'm assuming that, again, each their own. Everyone's going to have some individual situations. I don't think this is going to be an overnight switch, though. I don't think it's going to be all of a sudden you get symptoms control for every single aspect of it. I think this is going to be a cascade. It does take time. We saw this with other disorders of gene therapy. But again, if there's sleep issues, that could be a little bit later difference. Certain degrees of tremor, I think that it takes time for the brain to also rework itself in certain pathways. We don't know what degree of degeneration has happened with one's genes related to Parkinson's. So I think that this is going to be something that's ongoing.
I think it's very important that everybody that's in this room get a PD gene study. I think everybody needs to know if they have any type of genes, and that's what the beauty of this PD gene blood test is. It gives you an opportunity to know that where you sit, because it's going to happen. We're going to spark a lot of new clinical trials, even in our clinics. And if we know that you're already slotted for a gene that you have, that you can be placed on a clinical trial that's showing promise to slow the progression of disease, then it's worthy for you. So everybody that walks in please let me get a blood test for you, because I need to know where we're sitting and how many people have idiopathic forms of Parkinson's compared to the genes that we're looking at, the 7 genes that are the most common that Dr. Thakkar talked about. And so it's important to understand the reason why we're doing this, is so that it becomes precision medicine. We understand why this is happening to you, and if you have any of these genes, what to do going forward. It allows you to look at clinical trials, or you go, okay, I have this. What can I do with it? On top of allowing us to help you with it. So that's where we are in regard to getting the genes and understanding if you have these, and knowing going forward that this is a possibility you can get in a perfect study that may actually slow the progression or even halt the disease. That's why we have it, and that's why we need it. Okay.
Great question. And I have a question over here.
Hi, thanks very much. A question for either or both of you. Could you talk a little bit about Ambroxol for GBA1 mutations? Do you think it's promising? And if so, when would it be available in this country? And is there anything else for GBA mutations?
I have one patient on Ambroxol that has been getting it from Israel. I have no idea. We're getting there. But I don't think it's going to be available in this country. They literally bring it in. I don't know how they do it, but they bring it in for him. And he's been on it for probably about a year. He's done quite a bit of research in immunologists, and so he's looking at all the studies, and they look promising. He sent me all of them. That's why I know about this. But I don't know when it's going to be available in this country, unfortunately. But we also.
So we're actually getting the study. So we are actually getting the study. We actually are having it in a few months.
I wasn't on
that. We get a lot of emails. We get a lot of emails, by the way. But we're going to be actually getting that study.
Okay, there you go. It's going to be a part of the study.
If you're, yeah.
So we're looking at anti-inflammatory results from this, not something that's, I'm sure that's what we're looking at, really doing some trials. I didn't know that we were doing it.
Yeah, we're going to be doing it.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
We're doing a lot of things. We don't even know what we're doing tomorrow.
This is why we've got 2 of you up there. All right, our next question.
How are you funded, and how can people add to that, or financially help?
Don't worry about helping.
Where your
Just
support
support each other. We don't need to worry about funding. Luckily, again, at least I'm saying that. But the point is, like, that's where Dr. Bixby and I, we've aligned with a research entity, and then we are a means to have research coordinators join us, and then we can be the clinical kind of primary investigator or sub-I. We work together, and that's how we're able to then have a team along with our PAs. We're going to also have them, again, more access for patients. But the way we've aligned it is with someone who has contracts with different pharmaceutical agents, or companies, right? So we just get to be ourselves, and we're not worried about the financial component of it. We don't get any additional support outside of it.
He's absolutely right. And so that's why we both wanted to do clinical trials and robust clinical trials for a very long time.
But we can't do it by ourselves. So we had to work together plus have another source.
Because we both have individual clinics, we are our own entities, but we also are aligning for an opportunity, because if you know how clinical trials work, we need to have an opportunity to be able to work together, because we're both MDSs, so movement disorder specialists, that are very unique and very hard to find, and also very hard to find when you have your individual clinic. Like literally we work on our own, and it's super hard to have funding to be able to pay for research coordinators and space and opportunities, and letting you guys know that's happening. But the beauty of it is that Stu Isaacson really helped us kind of make this.
And you don't have to be part of an insurance for this.
No.
This is not, you have to be part of a hospital system or insurance.
It's covered by the pharmaceutical company or the device company, which is why they want to make this drug or device come to market, so it's available to all of you. And so that's what happens. There's 4 clinical trials. The first phase is with animal studies and safety. Second is safety, efficacy. Third is a wide range of national evaluation to make sure you get, like we talked about, we have 4 sites in the United States, which ultimately you want to make sure your power, which means that your ability to look at all populations across the country for it to actually have statistically significant influence and significance. And so the beauty of it is that we're very lucky to be walking in these shoes right now, to have an opportunity to help everyone. And that's been I'm sure your plight since we started this. And we have to find something for you. And so the beauty of it is, if we had Stu Isaacson, I would clap him off the stage, because he's really, really helped us bring this to an opportunity for all of you and us as well. So we all need hope, and that's what we're trying to give.
You know who does need funding? Parkinson's, Orange County. Thank you. I've got a long weekend, guys. Thank you. Our next question.
For folks who would like to get this gene study or be involved in clinical trials, as neuroscience navigator, I would love to know how to direct people to either or both of those things.
So our clinical trial coordinators were going to be here, but they couldn't make it. And so we do have numbers that we will give everybody that's putting on this wonderful event. Erin and I'm not going to mention her because she wants to be unheard. Lauren, please. So that you have an opportunity to be able to talk to either one of our clinics. Again, the nice thing about it is they float between our clinics, both of our clinics, and hopefully in time we'll have a nice space where you can always go, but we're going to get there. But thank you for asking that question. As with any of the clinical trials, if you're interested in the ones that Dr. Thakkar presented, and like you can see, we're going to have one, another one, another one, another one. So it's not like I can imagine my thought and my future self is going to have at least 30 or more trials. And everyone that's individually here being taken care of may be fitting in a different trial compared to another person. So just know that even just talking to them, saying, hey, I'm interested in trials. What do you have for me? And then they go through the screening process, basically, to see if you're included in the study, there's inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then you make the decision educatedly if you want to be a part of any of the trials.
Next question. And And just so everybody knows, any one of the workshops, whether you attend a Jumpstart for newly diagnosed, or, sorry, where was that question? Oh, there, Monica, hold on. Or if you attend a mid-stride, I will always follow up with information from the workshops. Any information that's available from the slides, any of the items they presented, I will always follow up with everybody in attendance. So rest assured, if you didn't get that note or you couldn't take a picture, I gotcha. All right, next one.
Thank you. Could you doctors tell me the most effective treatment for insomnia? I've been through so many programs and nothing seems to work. I'm awake all night. Is there some particular program that actually works?
Yeah, I can't say there's a specific medicine, but I would say that one of the things ideally, some aspects can be related to Parkinson's, but get a sleep study. I think it's extremely important to get a sleep study, get a sleep consult with a sleep specialist who can then evaluate if there's underlying issues related to sleep. We all go through different sleep patterns and cycles, and something can be interrupting us. It could be, again, we talked a lot, like both of us end up telling our patients about sleep hygiene when it comes to food, making sure that maybe you're not having any alcohol before sleep, maybe cutting out sugars in certain foods. There's a lot of medicines that can aggravate sleep as well. So, when you do go and get that consult with your primary care doctor and the sleep specialist, make sure you have all your updated meds, but also have a good, maybe even journal about the nights you get good sleep. I've seen a lot of our patients get these Oura rings, and they have their phones, and they have different ways of mapping how they're sleeping, but we may need some bit more detail just in case there's other aspects.
Next question.
Thank you. I'm so confused about what a proper diet is to follow. There's, you read about the mind and the DASH and the Mediterranean but don't do this. Can you elaborate or give us references to refer to? Thank you.
I think also in the world of diet, it's ever evolving. What we do know is that a lot of the data when it comes to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is a vegetarian diet is without question the safest. I mean, if you go to Loma Linda, that area of Loma Linda, that's the only blue zone in the United States, and there's the Adventist city, and the focus has been on vegetarian diet and exercise. So again, it's how interaction of also how you exercise, how you eat, how you metabolize food. But with Parkinson's, one of the biggest issues is constipation. So some people have an issue with certain foods. You have to be very careful in making sure you do have a good amount of fiber. Some people may have individual health issues related to diabetes, so you also have to be mindful of that. But a lot of grains, a lot of healthy nutrients. Try to avoid all the foods and protein drinks that end up with having additional sugars. I mean, we tell people who come into our clinic, when you're feeling dizzy and lightheaded, you're probably dehydrated. But then we end up saying, well, make sure you're hydrating well, but we just have only water. Maybe we do need other natural minerals. The other thing is a lot of those IV packets may have a lot of sugar in it. That could be also very irritable. So you want to read labels. I think that's an extremely important aspect of it. There is a podcast online about that, about diet, just in case someone wants to look at. But it is a vegetarian diet, Mediterranean-based diet has been extremely beneficial. There are people who end up focusing a lot of their meat with fish, but then also we're seeing higher rates of mercury in some people. So again, you have to be mindful of what you are eating. So it is okay to get a dietitian consult if it's possible, but also in the dietary world, they don't understand Parkinson's well enough. And I think we're still grappling with that when we have discussions with the dietitian.
I absolutely agree. I know that some of you have been born with eating meat and potatoes, and that's just your thing. And so we talk about the opportunity for you to still enjoy your life, but in moderation. And so if that is something that you feel good in, so some people have a piece of meat and feel horror, and that's just, you have to listen to your body. And some are like, I can't build muscle without having some type of protein that is animal in nature. And so finding your way, I absolutely agree, if we could, and you get to the place where you can do a vegetarian diet or find a way to actually, of course, get some fish in there for omega-3, 6, and 9. But the idea is that we're building something. I mean, I've been wanting to write a book forever in regard to Parkinson's diet because we looked at the DASH, we looked at the Mediterranean, we looked at the mind, And they all have certain aspects that are all similar, but then they throw this or that in there in regard to the pyramid. I mean, if you look at the pyramid that tells us across the country, this is what you should be eating, it hasn't been updated for a zillion years, unfortunately. And it's not really the best thing for you, because we have more cardiovascular diseases now, more diabetes than we've ever had in this country. And so we have to create an opportunity to look at your body, how do you feel on things, and create a diet of moderation. And so when it comes to, let's say you have restless leg, you can't have sugar 3 or 4 hours before you go to bed because you're going to have more restless leg. You have to find what your body is dealing with and how you're feeling, and if that changes you. Like, for instance, the constipation is real. You're not absorbing your foods. It's sticking in your diet. You're going to feel bad. And so that's the first thing I address when we talk about diet and I'm not feeling very well. What should I do? We slowly take a couple things off and say, okay, how's your body feel now? And figure out what your body's going to do, because they even have subtypes. Imagine that this person is going to do great with this type of diet, but the other person is going to literally lose too much weight, feel fatigue, and not do well with that diet. So you have to find what works for you. That's why it's so vast and not clearly giving you, this is what you need to do if you have Parkinson's. Because we have actually a really great nutritionist at Hogue, but they're working with, they were trained as a diabetic nutritionist. And so they're doing their best and they're learning, but yet we're all in a place where we're trying to figure it out. You know, we're getting to this place where now we have to see, okay, every single person in this room is different. Every single person has different genetics. What do you do when it comes to satiating yourself with food, but also taking care of yourself in the future self? And so creating an opportunity where you're eating something, eating foods that are giving you protein and fat and carbohydrates into a place where you're actually having enough nutrients. Because I have patients that do not eat any protein. And through COVID, I didn't know that they were losing so much weight. But they said that the medication wasn't working if they ate protein, which is so hard on you because you need it to build your muscles. You need to be able to have it for healing. And there's, of course, non-animal proteins and regular proteins. But it was so sad they came in and I had to put a feeding tube because that's that extreme. But it was really constipation they were having so much issues with. You treat the constipation, they go back on track, and they were gaining weight, and they got the tube out. So it's real. You have to look at it what works for you, but is it constipation that's the issue and not necessarily the foods that you're eating? But I feel like, I mean, I'm very big on food. You are what you eat. And so choose the right decisions. Again, some days you want to go in and out. Okay, do that once a month if you need to do that. But it's all in moderation to keep you safe.
Hydration is a big part of it. Make sure water. It's a big part.
Water, 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 water. Next question.
Yeah, I can't ever decide which symptom I hate the worst, but I used to never be tired. Now I'm never not tired. Is there anything I should be doing? And I want to work out. I'm too tired to work out. Seriously. Enough to solve the problem. What do I do?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, fatigue and energy-related Parkinson's is difficult. I think it's actually, you know, we always talk about with Parkinson's, tremor, stiffness, slowness. You know, constipation and fatigue is a huge, it's just as equivalent to those same symptoms. With fatigue, though, it is hard because I think some people do get a benefit from our levodopa formulations and our medicine that we take, but also there's a secondary maybe fatigue that can be from our meds. I think this is where the research is going into understanding that. I know that when some of our patients have switched over from a tablet form of medication to a continuous pump, they've had less fatigue. I think that, again, it goes back to the GI system. It's about food, it's about inflammation in the brain. I think food makes us what we call satiated, but it makes us feel so full. And in our Parkinson's body, we're a lot thinner. When we eat something, it causes stretch reflex in our stomach lining. Our stomach's pretty small, actually, the size of the fist. But we eat more than our size of the fist. We get this lethargy. We get this tiredness. So we also, again, are trying to preach for some people individualized plans where, again, maybe you're grazing throughout the day. Like you don't have your normal, like if you had a bagel for breakfast, maybe that's just way too much. Like maybe you just need to have a quarter of a bagel every 30 minutes, you know what I mean, just to kind of spread it out. And that's the other issue. There's more to it than just here's a pill for it. There's got to be really an identification of each person.
Number one symptom that people want to help themselves with, just so you know, and you're not alone. And so getting an understanding of you, just like our triggers with food, what is it that actually gets you to a place where you feel energized? Ooh, what did I do today? Was that a bowel movement in the morning? Woo, yay. Or is it like, you know, did you have a little bit of coffee? Or some people actually need something else. Did I sleep well last night? So when you look at fatigue, it's an umbrella term. So there's all these things underneath it that you have to figure out what they are. And sometimes you can get to the culprit and fix it. And so, yes, medication-induced fatigue is real. But so is low blood pressure. And so is like being constipated and holding a rock in here. And so is not sleeping well and acting out your dreams all night and saying, I didn't know I did that, and not getting a good night's sleep. And so it's a several-pronged approach of figuring it out, but you can figure it out, you know. And then at the very last thought process, I mean, if it's like everything you're doing, everything's moving, everything's working well, then we may consider. Again, the Movement Disorder Society has approved us to use a stimulant, Ritalin, Adderall, or Provigil, especially if you have a history of obstructive sleep apnea, to use small amounts of that to actually get you up on your day. Again, you have cardiovascular risk factors, everything else you have to look at, but some of my patients use that and it's changed their life. And so there's options there. Okay.
Got it. Next question.
I just want to know, is there any beneficial to taking prebiotics?
Okay, so everybody knows what a prebiotic is, right? Okay, let's talk. So there's prebiotic, probiotic, and then digestive enzymes, okay? So prebiotic is anything you put in your mouth, whether it be fibers or things that actually allow your body and your gut to have a nice, even flow, okay? You can do a prebiotic, now they're actually selling them, but it really does come down to green, leafy greens and good stuff for you. And so absolutely important for everybody that's in this room, okay? Probiotics, we're back and forth between understanding that. I mean, a lot of the GI doctors say that be careful, what are you doing, how are you doing it, but probiotics, it depends. And so some people don't have really good gut microbiome anymore. They know that they now have signatures. Parkinson's creates a signature of your stool. And in time, next thing now, is that they can literally take a stool sample and evaluate what types of bacteria you have and how much you have of excess. And it creates an opportunity to have a signature to see if Parkinson's is in your future. And so I was working with someone at Scripps trying to understand this. I wanted to do the dirty stuff, but I would help analyze it with stool samples and evaluate normal gut flora compared to abnormal gut flora, and is there a signature when it comes to Parkinson's? And they were finding it more and more that there was a signature. And so I have people that go do microseeding in UK, and now they have that in Chicago, where they do basically the bowel prep, if you're going to do a colonoscopy, and then they microseed normal flora, microbiome, and it allows them to actually feel much better. Again, is it subjective? I don't know, because we're still working on that. But you can imagine if you've got a little seeding of some good bacteria by putting a catheter up the bottom and seeding and giving a little bit of newness to that environment, it may be something we're going to learn so much about that our gut is our second brain. We all know that, right? And so if we're not taking care of our gut, we're not taking care of our brain. And so yes, we're working on it. But prebiotic, probiotic at this point is a good idea, as long as you're getting a good quality probiotic.
All right. It has come time to the last question. Oh, and we've got one last question. Perfect. All right, so you are the winner of the day. Your last question.
I was wondering if anyone's looking at like advanced plyometrics for young Parkinson's, or like any explosive athletic movements, or like some of the Formula One training that, like, I'm not saying to do that, but like anything along those lines, like with coordination, could that be helpful?
I mean, each their own, like what you can tolerate. Things have to be in your wheelhouse of athletic ability. I was just reading an article last night about exercise and how exercise is so important when we lose in our 30s. After our 30s, we start losing actually our ability to strengthen muscle, and so you should be working on power. We focus a lot in the movement world about flexibility and endurance and core strength and big movements, but also, again, there's a certain degree of power you should be working with. I always tell people you want to look like Tom Brady, not Arnold Schwarzenegger. You want to be lean, work on flexibility. You want to be able to like reach your back and itch it. You know, like you don't want to be so bulky, but you've got to tone your muscles, and it really involves like every aspect of your muscles. It means your facial muscles. It means your vocal muscles, right? It involves your core when it comes to, again, your shoulders. It involves your pelvic muscles. It involves your feet and toes for balance. So again, there's therapies that exist. You don't want to just focus on one. I think one of the things we always try is that we always want, what's that one diet? What's that one exercise? It's not one. It's about how you build it into your system, into your day, into your week. And a lot of people need a great day. Sometimes we overdo it with exercise. We have some patients who's like, I'm doing 3 hours a day and I'm doing great, but then their spouse is like, you're doing great while you're there, but then the next 6 hours you're tired. So you don't want to overdo it. A lot of our patients, they get this fatigue at the end of the day. We're really pushing, you should be doing some form of exercise in the morning, maybe being on a bike for 10 or 15 minutes in the morning, maybe in the afternoon you're doing more stretching or light weights, and then in the afternoon you're vice versa doing some light weights or stretching. Get your walks in regularly, but again, individualize the exercise to what you can also do. And get a partner, get a friend, get other groups. It's also important. Try to do it outdoors as much as you can as well.
I agree. We all know we have to move every day. If you move, you check that box, you did great. Okay, give yourself some grace, give yourself some hope. Believe that you're doing all the right things. If you move your body on a regular basis, you drink water, stay hydrated, and you allow yourself to have a social interaction like you're having today. And we're going to keep on pushing to get you the cure and slow the progression of the disease, but you have to do your things to be able to actually be ready for it, okay? Thank you so much for your time. Take care.